Oh, I remember a picture of Mo sitting on a tractor, I think, and she was out in the farmlands south of Enid where she grew up in Oklahoma. And I thought, that was a precursor of things to come for her. Because, she looked kind of like one of our early Oklahoma pioneers out there, And I absolutely consider her a pioneer.
Mo has an amazing work ethic. No matter what time of day, it appears that if I come into the office, she's there. If I drive by the office, her car's there. I think that her work ethic has a lot to do with her being raised on a farm.
My earliest memory of the farm is living in a farmhouse in Oklahoma. I worked out in the fields because my brothers had already left the home. And I plowed from early morning till late at night after the harvest. I was very young when I took on the role of being a milker, and I had a responsibility for one cow when I was like 6 years old. I remember the pasture lane. The pasture lane was a really special place for me because this is where I did my dreaming. And I would go down that lane because my job was to bring in the livestock in the evening. And I would pretend to be the leader of a band, or I would pretend that I was the bride walking down the aisle of a great cathedral. And there is something that makes the soul really aware of God and His creation. And you can only find that on a beautiful, wonderful farm.
Mo is tenacious. She just doesn't give up. You may not see that at first, but if you hang out with her long enough, you begin to realize that if she wants to go after something, she's going to go after it, and she's going to stick with it till she gets it.
We moved to a little town called Waukomis, and I went to enroll as a sophomore in high school and walked up, and there was this tall, gorgeous, handsome sophomore basketball player named Richard Anderson.
I think I noticed her like in the 8th grade. She played on the other basketball team, and I didn't really know her, but I'd see her around, and she had this long black hair, and she wore little ribbons in her hair, and real white skin, and she was pretty striking looking. But we didn't get acquainted until our sophomore year.
Our first date, if I remember correctly, was he invited me to go with him to a senior play.
After the play, she had a curfew. She had to be in by 11, and they had a long driveway. It was out in the country, and so when I got ready to leave, I backed the car out, and I missed the edge of the driveway, and my tire dropped off and hung up in this culvert. So we ended up having to wake up her dad about midnight to get him to help us get out of that. So that was his first introduction to me.
Our yearbook was called the Argus. Mo was a student at OCW. Looking back at my yearbook, my sophomore year, her freshman year, every place Mo's picture appears in the yearbook, she signed it. There is one picture that she had to hide from her family, however. It's a picture of her at a formal dance, dancing in a nice embrace with a young man. And she couldn't let her mother see that, so I think the story is that she spilled ink on that picture to hide her face. During that freshman year at OCW, Mo was a very hard-working student because she didn't have much income.
We married between our sophomore and junior year in college. We were 20, and that's too young. Don't get married when you're 20. But it was common back in those days.
We had a real low budget. And, we had a cheap apartment, groceries weren't much, Our car was low maintenance, so we just didn't spend a lot. We were just, determined to make it. We just weren't going to drop out. So
Mo worked downtown in a little stationery store, I think, business office supply. She worked long hours and every Monday through Friday, I guess maybe even on Saturdays.
You can't begin to imagine what it felt like walking across the stage and getting that degree. It was a magical moment for me.
Mo is a very patient person. Mo absolutely is a teacher at heart, and what she wants people to do is self-discover what they need to discover. And because of her background as a teacher, and because of her continuing love for education and helping people learn, she's used that patient ability in an amazing way to help people self-discover what they needed to know.
I wanted to become a music teacher at the age of about 8.
Mrs. Anderson taught me, that would have been back in '68, '69, Jefferson Elementary School in Ponca City, Oklahoma. She was in charge of the music program for that elementary school.
I taught music in a school on the other side of the tracks. My children were poor, and I grew up in poverty. So I could really relate to those kids.
I remember her patience that she had with all of the kids, singing off key, kids who couldn't sing but sure gave it a heck of a shot. She had great patience, but still was able to pull the very, very best out of each and every student in her class.
And I made up my mind early on as a music teacher at Jefferson Elementary that I was going to be demanding and that I wasn't going to accept mediocrity, because I wanted those children to learn what it felt like to really do something well and to really be accomplished and polished.
Jefferson Elementary was famous, absolutely famous, for the Christmas program that the choir would put on, and under the leadership of Mrs. Anderson. Junior highs would show up. The Ponca City Senior High School choir would show up and be just slack-jawed with how great we were.
So I would cheer for my football boys during the weekends when they had their games, and they sang for me like birds during the week.
One of the most positive traits about Mo Anderson is that she's a cheerleader. Now, this came naturally to her because she was a cheerleader early in her life. But as a businesswoman and as a leader, she's one of the most amazing cheerleaders I've ever met.
I couldn't make any money teaching school, and quietly in the back of his mind, he thought, if I could get this woman into real estate and she were compensated according to how hard she worked, she'd make a fortune. Well, he came home one night and he said, honey, I've enrolled you in a class. And I said, well, what kind of a class? And he said, a real estate class. And I thought he was nuts.
well, her image of realtors wasn't real high at that time.
That's right. When I thought of a realtor, I thought of a sign in front of a decrepit building that said real estate, insurance, and fish bait.
Mo had her license with a local company, and our neighbor was a builder. So he came over one night and proposed that we form a real estate company. He would build the houses and we would sell them. So we started a company in 1975. Then everyone would tell us, they were telling us it wouldn't work. Opened in a little office building, probably 300 or 400 square feet.
With 3 people, and the partnership didn't last very long.
The builders didn't build their 40 homes that they said they were going to build. They were more of a drag than they were a help.
And so the ownership structure changed, and it ended up being owned by Richard and me, and then 2 other partners, Ruth and Jerry.
I met Mo when she moved to Edmond in 1974, and I was immediately impressed with her. She attended a lay renewal meeting at our church and was very vivacious, and I saw right away that she was a very energetic person filled with momentum that matched her name.
Mo, with her partners Ruth Honeycutt and Jerry Brown, they really were pioneers in the real estate business, because I'm sure they were the only real estate company that was owned by women at the time. Most of the managing brokers and owners were men. And if you look back at the past presidents of the Edmond Board of Realtors, for years and years and years, they were always men. So she did kind of forge the way for women to move into a managerial position in real estate.
I would say that my style of leadership is one of an inspirational style.
We were all inspired each week to do our best. One of the things that they did at the end of sales meeting every week was quote the, I don't know where she got this, from Dale Carnegie, or
Yeah, from
if you act
Shirley Smith.
enthusiastic, you will be enthusiastic. And we all felt so stupid when we first started that, but it became part of us.
And it worked.
And it worked. If you act enthusiastic, you will be enthusiastic. If you act enthusiastic, you will be enthusiastic. If you act enthusiastic, you will be enthusiastic. Boy, am I enthusiastic.
And that little company grew from 3 people in the beginning to be an office of about 55 people, and we were recognized in 1983 as being the number 3 office out of 7,500 offices in the United States and Canada within the Century 21 system. So here we were in a little town called Edmond, and we were in the top 8 for a period of 6 years until we sold the company to Merrill Lynch. It was quite an adventure.
Mo Anderson is fearless. It'll show up when things get the toughest and when things get the hardest, or when things look very daunting. You wouldn't at her age and move from Oklahoma to Texas with nothing more than a suitcase to go to work in a little-known company called Keller Williams Realty if you weren't fearless.
In the spring, we would often have tornadoes and hailstorms. Many times we would run to our cellar to take safe haven. And as we would open the cellar door when the storm was over, we all held our breath because we didn't know if our crop had been destroyed or not. And many, many times that crop would be destroyed. No crop, no money. So I learned at a young age, you don't take anything for granted because the storms may come.
One of the time periods that Mo and I shared were the mid-'80s. Now, I lived in Texas and Mo lived in Oklahoma, but we were both going through the same exact situation, and that is there was a bust going on. It wasn't just a real estate bust, it was a banking bust, it was an oil bust, and by the way, Mo had taken a lot of her money and put it into those businesses, and it devastated she and her family, and it forced her to look up and say, I'm going to have to rebuild my financial assets. The thing that I respected about her most was that she never declared bankruptcy. Throughout all of that, she absolutely not only took care of her bills, but she had to take care of the bills of her partners who would not pay their own.
My little daddy taught us growing up that you pay your debts off. Bankruptcy is not an option, and that you must do the right thing, and the right thing is to pay off the debts.
Mo continued to work every corner, every idea she could think of to try and make money. And when eventually she found her success with Keller Williams, they paid back every penny they owed to every creditor and never took the easy way out of saying that they couldn't do it.
When you watch someone regroup, reshape, and become out bigger and better than ever, you know that they have something inside that in Oklahoma we call it, I think, a pioneering spirit.
I'm pretty sure we would not be with Keller Williams if we hadn't gone through that problem.
You know, not very many people could come from a rural Oklahoma background, be a music and liberal arts major, enter the business world, do extremely well in the business world, build up a major business in central Oklahoma, see it totally collapse in the oil bust in the 1980s, get up, go on, and do her again.
Losing our money was probably one of the best things that ever happened to us in our whole life.
Mo and I met because we were both prospecting for leads. Mo was in North Dallas calling on offices door to door to see if they would be involved in her pro-development training company. I, by the way, had people out regularly calling me and telling me about people who they thought would be great candidates to go into business with.
Chris, the team leader at that time, better known as the manager, I think was what they were called Gary and said, Gary, we've got to have this training in all our offices in Texas. At that time, it was my understanding that there were 15 offices in Texas, no place else.
So I remember my first telephone call from Gary Keller. He was so interesting, he was so amazing on the phone, and we talked for quite a while, and he called me several times, and finally he said, may I fly to Oklahoma City and meet you? And I said, that would be wonderful.
And so I packed up all my manuals into 2 suitcases. We agreed to spend the day together. I flew to Oklahoma City. She picked me up at the airport. And I know that both of us were having an interesting aha, because voices on the phone are different than faces in person. And I suspect that I sounded older than I was, and I guarantee you she sounded younger than she was.
And I'm looking for this mature man, and this kid walks up to me and says, hi, I'm Gary Keller.
And when we met, her first comment to me was, "Hun,
I'm old enough to be your mother." So we visited together all day, and Richard and I so enjoyed meeting him and visiting with him. He flew back to Austin. We continued to talk frequently on the phone, and then one day he called and said, I'm having some consultants fly in, and I'd love for you to come to the meeting. So I spent 3 days there, and on the second day I was exposed to the economic model and to the business model, and I literally had to hang on to my chair. And I'm the fastest recruit in the history of the company because I knew I wanted to do this in less than 5 minutes. I give 8 presentations to local brokers in the area, and they all fold their arms, lean back in their chairs, and say,
I think you're losing it. You know, you're talking about the prisoners run the prison, and you're talking about profit sharing, and you and I both know there's very few profitable brokers. That's kind of why they call them brokers.
But the money did show up through John and Paul.
And I was always fascinated with the residential real estate business. And so I told Mo, I said, Mo, if you ever determine to get back in that business, let me know. I've always been fascinated with it and be interested in being an investor in it.
So I called him up and I said, John and Paul, be at my house Monday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Paul and I met with her at her office and said she had something she wanted us to take a look at. And on the way up there, I said, I don't care what Mo's got, I'm not investing.
We're a little bit reticent about doing this because the times weren't too great around here then.
And we must have been there probably 2 hours. And then towards the end of the meeting, I said, well, okay, I'm in for half. Paul Woolsey looked at me, he said, you're not even going to think about it? I said, well, deal's a deal, you know.
John and Paul agreed to fund the first office, and then maybe, if we do well in a few months, they'll fund the second office, which was Edmond. But in the meantime, along came a man by the name of Dave Jenks.
Yeah, I knew of Mo probably at least 10 years before I actually met her. She was for me a leader and an icon in the real estate industry long before I actually met her in 1990.
We had become acquainted, and he approached me to come and run a region for him for Century 21.
So I'd been appointed divisional president for Century 21 South Central States out of Dallas. And I had 5 regions underneath me, and I really needed a regional director for Oklahoma, Missouri, and Kansas. And I thought, Mo Anderson.
And he offered me the moon. He offered me a fabulous, fabulous base salary and all of these bonuses if I were to achieve a certain level of production.
Because she needed the money, she wanted the opportunity, the chance to work with me, to work with Century 21. I really needed a great regional director there. I threw money at it. I recruited the heck out of her.
Now, if I do Keller Williams, I have no salary. It is strictly an entrepreneurial project. If I accept the offer from Dave Jenks, I have hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the day came for me to give Dave Jenks an answer I will never forget. I called him and I said, Dave, I'm going to have to tell you no.
And I said, Mo, why not? And she said, because I've agreed to open a Keller Williams region in Oklahoma. And I said, well, Mo, I know about opening regions. I know about franchising. I mean, have you signed a contract? And she said, no. And I said, well, then no problem. I mean, you'll just call them and tell them that some plans have changed or whatever. If you haven't signed a contract, we can get you out of it. And she said, Dave, no. I shook hands on it. And when I shake hands on something, it's a contract I won't break.
And Dave was disappointed. I hung up the phone. I cried. I walked in to see Richard and I said, did I make the right decision? And he looked at me and smiled and said, you made the decision I knew you would make, that you would keep your word.
There's a strength that runs pretty deep inside of Mo that you'll catch fairly quickly, and that is that she has a deep faith in God and Jesus Christ. Mo absolutely is a rock in those beliefs.
I get the feeling that Mo had probably had deep roots in her faith as she was growing up.
I heard someone say one time of Mo that she has a very deep memory. That deep memory serves her very well in terms of her faith because it goes back to childhood.
I've come to realize that God has a special plan for each life. And perhaps some people can plan their life. For me, life has sort of unfolded.
It's not like Mo's faith is over here and then she's a business person over here. Mo's faith is over here and she's a decision maker over here. But, you know, they intertwine, you know, with an invisible seam.
My dad was really unique. He was the greatest example of a Christian I've ever met. His compassion and his joy in helping other people was just profound. I can remember my dad giving away his last dime. He did this over and over. And I would say, Daddy, we need that money. Why are you giving it away? And he taught me the lesson that if you share from the joy of your heart and from really wanting to share, that you will receive.
I think that Mo Anderson's legacy will be integrity and her enthusiasm, her optimistic attitude, very upbeat personality, and just the idea that we need to give more than we need to think about receiving.
A big part of Mo's legacy for Keller Williams is that She saw KW Cares and said, I want every agent in our company to be able to give back so that we're really reaching out to and helping people in need.
I would say that Mo's involvement in KW Cares is a natural extension out of the fact that she just cares. She sees this as a wonderful way and a wonderful vehicle for all of us to demonstrate just how much we really care about each other.
She really went about making this a program that would not only help one market center, one city, one state, but an entire nation and all of Canada.
And I believe she truly is our grand dame. She's like the grand dame of Keller Williams International, and she always will be.
Mo is our KW culture.
What she has taught me and what I learned from her class, I still use every day.
You've been a wonderful influence on my life through the years, and I thank God that He brought us together.
She has been a true friend.
I'd really like to know if in business there's anybody that has created what she has helped to create and done what she has done, and how many thousands of lives in so many ways that she has affected.
I'm so thrilled to have been a real estate agent because I never lived in a home that was owned, and now I get to be in a business where we help people own a home. That is a thrill and a joy beyond description for a tenant farmer's daughter.
Mo, a very happy 70th to you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Mo.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Mo.
Happy birthday, Mo.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Mo. We love you.
I just want to wish you a happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Grammy!
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Mo.
Happy birthday from another Taurus.
Hi, Mo. I want to wish you a happy birthday, and I hope you have many, many more. And we need to start up another business because I'd be an investor in it. And time's getting away, so we need to hurry about that deal.
Happy birthday, Mo. I love you.
Happy birthday, Mo.
May all your dreams come true, and may this be one of the most special days of your life. We love you.
Happy birthday, Mo. We love you.
Happy birthday, Mo!